Again, it is a unique scenario that we find them in. This is the nation of Israel. The majority are here in captivity. There's been a small contingent that has left to go to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem with Ezra. And you have the majority here. And in this book, we have right here around the king's court, the king of Persia, Ahasuerus, is king at this point, and we see where Esther, we got through chapter 2, and Esther is made queen after Vashti was put out of her queenship in the first chapter. And so we have this young Jewish girl in a foreign land as a captive, made queen of this kingdom, this world empire. She is queen of it all. And there is, at least in the sphere of the story as it's being told to us, there's no mention of God. There is no mention of prayer. There is no mention of worship to God. He is left out of this story as it is being told to us here in the book of Esther. This is the condition of the people of Israel, it seems, there in captivity. Now, again, we know it's not the case in every part or among every person, because you have those that went back with Ezra to rebuild the temple. They had a desire to see God worshiped again in the land. They wanted to rebuild the temple. They wanted to be back in Israel. And so you have that contingency is there. Nehemiah is coming up, and Nehemiah, he wants to get back and rebuild the walls of the temple, or the walls of the city of Jerusalem, and for the people to come back into the land, a place to honor their God. So it's not the case throughout those in captivity, but right here in this story of Esther, right here around the throne of the king, this is the case. This is where we find them here. So very interesting from the perspective that it is written in. But we see, without the mention of God, without the acknowledgement of him, without the acknowledgement of why they are even in captivity because of their sin against God, we see God nonetheless working to preserve his people. And we see here, as he is, as his hand, though his name is not mentioned, we see his hand working here in the providence for his people, accomplishing these things throughout this story. And so it begins here in verse 1 of chapter 3. Esther has been promoted. She's made queen. Mordecai saves the king's life there. We saw that last time right there at the end of chapter 2. There was some that were plotting to kill the king, and Mordecai hears about it, reports it to the king, actually reports it to Esther. Esther gets it to the king, and these two chamberlains are found guilty, and the king's life is saved. These two were executed for their conspiracy against the king, and it's recorded what Mordecai did, but Mordecai is not in any way rewarded because of this. He's somehow overlooked. And we come into chapter 3 here, and we immediately begin to see this man Haman come to the forefront and his promotion in the kingdom. And this is where the strife is going to be here as Haman is brought forth. He also would have been a captive in the land. That's how he would have gotten there in the land as well. And he is promoted here in the reign of Ahasuerus. And it tells us here, verse 1, it says, after these things did King Ahasuerus promote Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, and advanced him and set his seat above all the princes that were with him. And all the king's servants that were in the king's gate bowed and reverenced Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him, but Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence. Then the king's servants, which were in the king's gate, said unto Mordecai, Why transgressest thou the king's commandment? Now it came to pass, when they spake daily unto him, and he hearkened not unto them, that they told Haman to see whether Mordecai's matters would stand if he had told them that he was a Jew. And when Haman saw that Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence, then was Haman full of wrath. And so we read here that King Ahasuerus, he promotes Haman to this position of the chief of the princes of his kingdom. And he is, of course, from the tribe of the Amalekites from Canaan. That's where he's from. That's who he belongs to. And had Saul done what he was supposed to have done, if he would have obeyed the commandment of God back in 1 Samuel chapter 15, this would not be an issue for the children of Israel here. Here in this time of captivity, as they are gathered away from the land of Israel, this situation would not have arisen had Saul obeyed God all the way back there in 1 Samuel chapter 15. But because he had not, we have this situation here has arisen. And the king commanded that Haman was to be bowed to and revered because of his position as the head of the princes. And Mordecai, though there's no mention of God, he refuses to do so. And they have determined, those that were with him, they have determined that he has done this because he is a Jew. And so, at least from that, he was not willing to give worship to any man. He was not willing to give any worship to any man. And so Mordecai refuses to bow. And his friends, they were telling him, you need to bow whenever Haman comes by. You better get that straight. You better bow. You're going to get in trouble. And they did this every day, and Mordecai just simply refused. And so then they go and tattle on him. Well, the reason he's not bowing is because he's a Jew. You think that would matter if Haman finds out that he's a Jew, and that's the reason he won't bow? And so these servants did try to convince Mordecai to give this reverence to Haman as was commanded. But Mordecai himself, though out of the will of God, still refused to worship or reverence Haman as a man. And so they warned Mordecai of what would happen, but then they would go and tattle on him. And after a long time of silence, Mordecai told he was a Jew, and he was forced into a situation that he was forced to declare who he belonged to as a people. It says there in verse 5 again, when Haman saw that Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence, then was Haman full of wrath. And he thought scorn to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had showed to him the people of Mordecai. Wherefore Haman sought to destroy all the Jews that were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, even the people of Mordecai. And so it was found out Mordecai was a Jew, and so Haman's response will destroy all the Jews. This has been, no doubt, a part of his heritage, even unto this day. Maybe even remembering Samuel killing Agag and chopping him up there before Saul. This may have been something that was in Haman's heart, even to know that this Jew would not bow down and worship him and bid him reverence. And so I'm just going to kill all the Jews. We'll just wipe them all out. Now, this has been tried before. And it's been tried since. And at every instance, it fails because God is a faithful God that keeps his promises to his people. And he does not fail. He does not fail on those promises. He will perform those promises. He will keep them. And all those future promises that are given to Israel, that are promised to them, he will perform. He's going to do them. He's not going to miss these promises that he made. He is faithful to them, and he will perform all that he's promised for them. And so here, and especially now in this time, as we touched on last week, this is not only a preservation of his people, Israel, even though they're not mentioning him, even though they're not speaking of him, even though they're not worshiping him in this in these in this narrative that's given us. This is not just for the preservation of Israel, but it is a preservation of the promise of God concerning the Messiah, and that comes then to us. You see, had God failed in any way there, then we would not have salvation, and had He failed in any, He would not be God. I mean, that's just He is faithful through and through, and His plans, His purposes, His promises will never be foiled. They will never be undone, whether it's Satan or whether it's Haman or whether whoever might be that would stand against the promises of God. They are going to fail every time. God's promises will stand sure. He will keep his promises. He will preserve his people just as he has promised to do. And so this is a direct affront against the very promises of God that Haman is stirring up here. And so Haman says, I'll just have all the Jews killed. That's the way we'll go here. And he thought scorn, verse 6, to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had showed him the people of Mordecai. Wherefore Haman sought to destroy all the Jews, that even throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, even the people of Mordecai. In the first month, that is the month Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast pur, that is the lot, before Haman from day to day and from month to month to the 12th month, that is the month Adar. And Haman said unto King Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of thy kingdom, and their laws are diverse from all people. Neither keep they the king's laws. Therefore, it is not for the king's profit to suffer them. If it please the king, let it be written that they may be destroyed, and I will pay 10,000 talents of silver to the hands of those that have the charge of the business to bring it into the king's treasuries. And the king took his ring from his hand and gave it unto Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the Jews' enemy. And the king said unto Haman, the silver is given to thee, the people also to do with them as it seemeth good to thee. And so Haman, he had his magicians to cast lots to find out which day of the year would be the day that the Jews would be destroyed from the land. And they settle on the 12th month, in the month Adar. There, that's when from day to day and from month to month to the 12th month, that is the month Adar, that's when it was decided there. And then he brings it before the king, and he told the king here of the evil of these Jews, as had every king or emperor since their beginning. This bunch of people, they're rebels. You can't do anything with them. They're not going to obey what you say. They're not going to obey your law. And it's not doing you any good to have them in your kingdom walking around or having any part of this. You need to get rid of all of these Jews. And I'll pay, he said, 10,000 talents of silver to the hands of those that have the charge of the business, he says, to bring it into the king's treasuries. And all that we're going to rob from these Jews, we'll bring it into the king's treasury. And we're just going to build up our coffers if the king would allow me to do this and carry this out. And the king, all he could see, money. That sounds good. I like that. Make me some more money. And he liked the idea of that more money. And so he took the ring from his hand as the royal seal, and he gave him the money to pay for it and gave him the permission to do as he pleased. And once again, we see Ahasuerus not thinking through this major decision that took place, that's brought before him. He's not sought it through. He's not sought counsel of any other. He's not sought out, well, what is the benefits of this, and what is the problems with this? How is this going to affect my kingdom? He's not thought any of that through, much like we see in chapter 1. We see he is one who is moved with emotion and does not think about what's coming to pass or what could come to pass due to his actions. And so he signs the proclamation, gives his ring as the royal seal for it. In verse 12, it tells us there, says, then were the king's scribes called on the 13th day of the first month, and there was written according to all that Haman had commanded, unto the king's lieutenants, and to the governors that were over every province, and to the rulers of every people and of every province, according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language, in the name of King Ahasuerus was it written and sealed with the king's ring. And the letters were sent by post into all the king's provinces to destroy, to kill, and to cause to perish all Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, even upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar, and to take the spoil of them for a prey. So this decree was signed, sealed by the ring of the king, and letters were sent to every part of the kingdom. Now, we are here in the city here with the king in Shushan. That's where the palace was at. And this is our perspective of this order going out. But often in reading this, we don't consider these letters were sent to all the provinces, to the 120 provinces that he ruled over, literally the known world in their day that he is king over, which would include Israel, which would include the band with Ezra there in Jerusalem building the temple at that time. And so if this order would have been carried out in the way that it's given here, then Ezra, along with those that were building the temple, they would have been attacked as well. And that would have been brought to naught as well. The children of Israel not entering back into the land would not have come to pass. The Messiah would not have been born if that would have come to pass. And so we have all of these realities here in regards to this. That didn't just, in other words, it just wasn't Esther and Mordecai that this is affecting here. This is all of the Jews, wherever they may have been scattered in the kingdom, but particularly those that were in Jerusalem even at that time, doing that work there. This was directly affecting them. This order that was given by the king, this proclamation that was sent out, and they've got a year before this is carried out now. Lots are cast. It was the 13th month, or the 13th day of the 12th month is when this is to be conducted, when this is to be carried out. and so it's sent out into the kingdom there. It's carried about so that all would know on that day, that very day, the 13th day of the 12th month, every Jew, whether man, woman, child, young child, they were all to be put to death, and all that belonged to them was to be gathered up and brought into the treasury house of the king. Verse 14, the copy of the writing. The copy of the writing for a commandment to be given in every province was published unto all people, that they should be ready against that day. The post went out, being hastened by the king's commandment, and the decree was given in Shushan the palace. And the king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city Shushan was perplexed. And so the kingdom was left wondering, why is such evil decreed to be done? Why is it that this is brought in our kingdom, that this wickedness is to be performed? But the king and Haman sat down to drink, relishing in their coming fortune. That's the only thing the king could see at this point. Now, this will prompt fasting among the Jews. It's interesting there in chapter 4, it mentions fasting, but it doesn't mention prayer. But that's usually what would go along with the fasting is prayer. But we're just told they fasted. It brings up fasting here among the Jews, and Mordecai prompting here Esther to take a stand for her people, and to tell what was or I guess what the full impact of this decree was going to be. And so we see God even in this, with the odds so mounted against them here based upon this law. And remember, this law, just like the law in chapter 1, is a law that cannot be undone. The law of the Medes and the Persians could not be undone once it was signed by the king. Once the king made it law, it could not be overturned. It couldn't go before the Supreme Court and they say, no, that's not legal. You can't do that. Or it couldn't go before some other board, or the king himself couldn't even say, you know what, I don't like this anymore. I don't want this to be the law. He could not do that. The law, once it was signed, once it was made law, once the decree was given, it could not be overturned. We found that out in chapter 1. Now we see it being carried out in chapter 3 as well. And this decree then is the reality. It's what's going to take place. It's what's going to take place. And yet we see, as these next chapters unfold, as God moves on behalf of the children of Israel, and in his providence, he's going to bring that protection for them through the courage of this young woman, Esther, who was made queen. She's going to be a savior for her people, as she's going to be that one to intercede on behalf of the people of Israel. And so she is put in a position by God that she has the opportunity to do this very thing, to bring to pass this help for the children of Israel, to ensure their safety, to ensure that God's promises would be performed as He has given. And as Mordecai brings up, and we'll look at that, Lord willing, next time there in chapter 4, as Mordecai brings up, one way or another, if it's not you, one way or another, deliverance is going to come to the Jews. So, but this was your time. This is your time given for such a time as this, he says. But one way or another, he said, if you're not going to take it, if you're not going to do it, one way or another, there will be deliverance for the Jews. And so he had a faith, he had a confidence in the promises of God. But we're not told that specific, just based on his points. He's not mentioning God's name. He's not declaring even the faithfulness of God, but he does make that statement. One way or another, deliverance is coming for the Jews. He understood that anyway. He understood that because God is ever faithful. God is ever faithful, and he will keep his promises. He will keep them to his people. He will perform them just as he says. So no matter what may come our way, no matter what may come our way, we can trust the promises of our God. We can believe his word so that no matter how bad it may appear in our world, no matter how bad it may appear, no matter how wicked the world may turn, no matter how wicked they may rebel against God, we can trust God's promises to us. He's going to work. He's going to do. He's going to fulfill just what he says he's going to do. He's going to keep his promises. He is ever faithful to his people and to his promises. So we can rest assured that no matter what comes our way, our God has not left us alone. He has not left us to ourselves, that he is ever present with his people. He is the faithful God. The faithful God. All right.